Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like your soul was starving, like something was missing, but you couldn't put your finger on it? Let me tell you, you're not alone. See, life has a way of making us run on empty, chasing things that don't fill us. But when you start growing closer to God, something shifts. You don't see the world the same way. You don't feel the same way. And today I want to give you 5 signs, 5 undeniable signs that you are on that journey, that God is pulling you in. First, you stop chasing comfort and you start chasing truth. Now this right here is where most people get stuck, because truth isn't always easy. It challenges you. It forces you to let go of old habits, old mindsets, maybe even old relationships, and that's hard. But when you grow closer to God, you stop settling for what feels good and start striving for what is good. And let me tell you, when you commit to walking in truth, doors start opening that you didn't even knock on. Second, you stop seeing your struggles as setbacks and start seeing them as setups. Oh, come on now. I know somebody out there has been through something. You've had nights where you cried, days where you felt like giving up. But let me tell you something. If you are still here, it's because your story isn't over. God doesn't waste pain. Every trial, every tear, every why me moment is shaping you for something greater. You don't just go through struggles, you grow from them. And when that happens, you start feeling peace in places where you should be panicking. That's number 3. I mean real peace, not the kind the world gives, temporary, conditional, based on circumstances, but the kind that doesn't even make sense, the kind that allows you to smile when life is throwing everything at you. Because you know deep down, no matter what happens, you are in the hands of the one who never fails. And then, oh, this is the real one right here. You start loving differently. Not just the people who are easy to love, not just the ones who love you back, but the difficult ones, the broken ones, the ones who don't look like you, think like you, or even like you. Because when you get close to God, you start seeing people the way He sees them. And let me tell you, that kind of love, that's world-changing love. So if you're feeling any of these, if your heart is shifting, if your mindset is changing, don't ignore it. That's not just personal growth. That's spiritual transformation. That's proof that God is working in you. And let me tell you, when God starts something in you, He will finish it. There was a man who lived his whole life searching for comfort. He wanted success, so he chased money. He wanted happiness, so he sought pleasure. He wanted love, so he surrounded himself with people who praised him. But despite all he had, despite the wealth, the attention, the temporary highs, his soul was empty. Something inside him whispered, "This isn't it." And that whisper grew louder every day until he could no longer ignore it. See, the thing about comfort is that it's deceptive. It feels good in the moment, but it never truly satisfies. It tricks you into believing that as long as life is easy, as long as things are smooth, you're doing okay. But deep down, you know the truth. You know that the things that truly change you, the things that truly make you better, are never easy. Growth is uncomfortable. Transformation is painful. And when you start growing closer to God, your heart stops craving what's easy and starts craving what's right. Think about a caterpillar. If it never went into the cocoon, if it never struggled through the process of transformation, it would never become a butterfly. It would stay crawling, never knowing it was meant to fly. That's what comfort does to you. It keeps you crawling. But when you crave truth, when you seek what is right instead of what is easy, that's when you begin to soar. The world will tell you to take the easy road. It will tell you to cut corners, to stay quiet when you should speak up, to avoid anything that makes you uncomfortable. But the easy road has no purpose. It's wide, it's crowded, and it leads nowhere. The path of truth, though, it's narrow, it's tough, it's lonely sometimes, but it leads to something real. It leads to purpose. Think about the people in history who changed the world. Martin Luther King Jr., Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela. Do you think they chose comfort? No, they chose truth. They stood for something bigger than themselves, even when it was hard, even when it cost them everything. And that's the sign that you are growing closer to God. You start to value truth more than ease. Now let me bring this home for you. Maybe you're in a place right now where you feel like you're being pulled in 2 directions. You've got one foot in comfort and one foot in calling. You know what's right, but you're afraid to step into it because it's hard. It's uncertain. It might cost you relationships. It might cost you security. It might cost you everything you thought you needed. But let me tell you this, if you know it's right, if you know in your heart that God is calling you to something greater, then you can't afford to stay comfortable. Think of a ship. A ship is built for the open waters, for adventure, for the unknown. But if it stays docked at the shore because it's afraid of the storms, it never fulfills its purpose. And just like that ship, you were made for more. You weren't made to stay safe, to stay small, to stay comfortable. You were made to step into something greater. And I won't lie to you, choosing truth over comfort will test you. It will break you down before it builds you up. You will face resistance. People won't understand why you're changing. They won't understand why you no longer entertain gossip, why you no longer chase after temporary pleasure, why you no longer settle for the easy way out. And that's okay, because when you choose truth, when you choose God, you are choosing to be transformed. I know a man who was on the verge of losing everything, his job, his family, his peace, because he had spent his whole life choosing what was easy instead of what was right. He avoided hard conversations. He ran from responsibility. He numbed himself with distractions. But one day, when he was at his lowest, he realized something. The life he had built on comfort was collapsing. And in that moment, he made a decision. He chose truth. He chose to be honest with himself. He chose to face the pain he had been running from. And it wasn't easy. It hurt. But slowly, he began to rebuild. And for the first time in his life, he felt free. See, that's what happens when you grow closer to God. You stop running. You stop hiding. You stop looking for the easy way out. And instead, you step into truth. And when you do that, you will find something that comfort could never give you: purpose. So let me leave you with this. If your heart is starting to crave truth, if you feel that pull towards something greater, don't ignore it. That's God calling you. That's Him telling you, you were made for more. And when you choose to walk in truth, when you choose to step out of comfort and into calling, that's when you truly begin to live. There was once a man who had everything he thought he needed: success, respect, a life that looked perfect from the outside. But then, everything fell apart. He lost his job. His friends disappeared. His health took a hit. And in the middle of his storm, he did what most of us do. He asked, "Why me?" He begged God for answers. He wanted to know why he was being punished when all he had done was try his best. But silence was the only response he got. See, that's the thing about struggles. When you're in the middle of them, they don't make sense. They feel unfair. They feel like punishment. They make you question everything you thought you knew. But let me tell you something. The struggles you face are not designed to break you. They are designed to build you. Think about a diamond. A diamond doesn't start out beautiful. It starts as a piece of coal, buried deep in the ground. And do you know what turns that coal into a diamond? Pressure, heat, intensity. If you take away the pressure, the coal remains coal. It never reaches its full potential. But when it goes through the fire, when it endures the crushing weight, that's when it transforms into something priceless. That's what struggles do to you. They refine you. They shape you. They strip away the things that were never meant to be part of your life, so that you can step into the person you were always meant to become. And when you grow closer to God, you start to see struggles not as punishments, but as preparation. Think about Joseph in the Bible. He had a dream that one day he would be great, that he would lead, that he would make an impact. But before that dream came true, what happened? He was betrayed by his own brothers, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, wrongfully imprisoned. If anyone had the right to say, "Why me?" it was Joseph. But do you know what's powerful? Every struggle he faced was setting him up for his destiny. Every betrayal, every hardship, every lonely night in a prison cell was preparing him for the day he would stand in a palace, second in command of an entire nation. Now maybe you're going through something right now. Maybe life has knocked you down so many times that you're wondering if you even have the strength to get back up. Maybe you've been fighting battles no one else sees, carrying burdens No one else understands. And you're tired. You're frustrated. You're asking, why me? But let me ask you something. What if instead of asking why, you started asking what? What is this struggle teaching me? What strength is being built in me through this pain? What is God preparing me for? Because I promise you this, your pain is not pointless. Your struggles are not wasted. The very thing that is breaking you right now is the thing that will build you into the person you were created to be. I know a man who grew up in poverty. He didn't have a father in his life. He struggled every single day just to survive. And as a kid, he used to pray, God, why is my life so hard? But years later, after pushing through every obstacle, after refusing to let his struggles define him, he found himself in a position where he could help others, people who were struggling the way he once did. And in that moment, he realized something. If he hadn't gone through those struggles, he wouldn't have the strength to do what he was doing now. If he had never been broken, he wouldn't have the wisdom to help others heal. See, your struggles aren't just about you. They are equipping you to be a light for someone else. They are giving you a testimony that will inspire someone who feels like giving up. They are making you stronger, wiser, more compassionate. They are shaping you into someone who can walk through fire and come out stronger on the other side. And that's the shift that happens when you grow closer to God. You stop seeing struggles as something meant to destroy you, and you start seeing them as something meant to develop you. You stop feeling sorry for yourself and start realizing that every hardship, every setback, every heartbreak is making you unshakable. Because let's be honest, comfort never made anyone strong. Ease never built character. Strength is forged in the fire. And if you're walking through fire right now, I need you to understand something. You are being refined, not ruined. So don't run from the struggle. Don't resent it. Don't waste time feeling sorry for yourself. Lean into it. Grow through it. Because one day you're going to look back and realize that the very thing you thought was breaking you was actually making you unbreakable. There was a man who had everything planned out. He had goals, a vision, a sense of control over his life. He worked hard, made smart decisions, and stayed on top of everything. Then out of nowhere, the storm came, his business collapsed, his relationships fell apart, his health took a hit, everything he thought was secure crumbled in front of him, and for the first time in his life, he realized he was not in control. See, life has a way of reminding us that no matter how much we plan, no matter how hard we try to hold everything together, there are storms we cannot predict, losses we cannot prevent, and battles we cannot fight on our own. The question is not if the storm will come. The question is, how will you stand when it does? Because most people panic when chaos hits. They lose sleep, they get anxious, they try to fix everything in their own strength. And when things don't change fast enough, they break. But then there are the ones who stand firm, the ones who don't waver when the wind blows, the ones who keep their peace even when the storm is raging. And if you've ever met someone like that, someone who seems unshaken even in the worst of times, you might wonder, how? How are they not falling apart? It's simple. They know who's in control. When you grow closer to God, you stop depending on yourself to hold everything together. You stop thinking that your security comes from your job, your money, or your relationships. You stop believing the lie that your peace is based on perfect circumstances. Because the truth is, if your peace depends on everything going right, you will never have peace. Life is unpredictable. People will fail you. Plans will fall apart. But when your peace comes from knowing that God is in control, nothing can shake you. There's a story about Jesus and his disciples on a boat. They were sailing across the sea when all of a sudden a violent storm hit. The waves were crashing, the wind was howling, and the disciples, grown men, fishermen who had seen storms before, were terrified. They thought they were going to die. But where was Jesus? Asleep. Now think about that. In the middle of chaos, in the middle of panic, in the middle of a storm so strong that experienced sailors thought they were done for, Jesus was sleeping. Because he knew something they didn't. He knew that no storm, no wind, no wave had more power than the one who created them. And when the disciples woke him up, desperate and afraid, he simply stood up and said, "Peace, be still." And just like that, the storm stopped. That kind of peace is available to you. That kind of peace is what happens when you trust that no matter how bad things look, no matter how out of control life seems, you are in the hands of the one who holds the universe together. Now maybe you're in the middle of a storm right now. Maybe life has hit you in ways you never expected. Maybe you're watching everything you worked for fall apart. Maybe you're dealing with loss, heartbreak, uncertainty. And maybe like those disciples, you're asking God, where are you? But let me tell you something, just because He's silent doesn't mean He's absent. Just because you can't hear Him in the storm doesn't mean He's not right there with you. And when you realize that, when you truly believe that God is for you, that He is with you, that He has a plan even when you don't see it, that's when peace becomes your foundation. That's when you stop reacting to chaos and start walking through it with confidence. Because peace isn't the absence of storms. Peace is knowing who's in the boat with you. I know a woman who went through a season where everything fell apart at once. She lost her job. Her marriage ended. Her health took a turn for the worse. People expected her to break, to fall apart, to give up. But instead, she walked through that season with a peace that didn't make sense. She wasn't in denial. She felt the pain. She cried. She grieved. But she didn't let it consume her. And one day someone asked her, "How are you not breaking down?" And she smiled and said, "Because I know this storm won't last forever. I know who's in control. I know I'm being held even when I don't feel it." That's the kind of peace that comes when you trust in something bigger than your circumstances. That's the kind of peace that lets you stand firm when life is shaking. That's the kind of peace that turns chaos into confidence. Because when you truly know that God is in control, you don't have to fear the storm. You don't have to panic. You don't have to let anxiety rule your mind. You can stand in the middle of the storm, look it in the face and say, "Peace, be still." There was a man who lived his whole life with walls around his heart. He only loved the people who loved him back. He only gave to those who could return the favor. He judged people from a distance, labeling them based on what he saw on the outside. He had no patience for the broken, no time for the difficult, no space for the ones who had made mistakes. He thought love was something you earned, something you had to deserve. But then one day his life fell apart. The same people he once judged were the ones who showed up for him. The ones he had looked down on were the ones who lifted him up. And in that moment he realized he had spent his whole life misunderstanding love. See, the way the world teaches us to love is conditional. Love, as most people understand it, has limits. It says, "I'll love you if you love me back. I'll forgive you if you deserve it. I'll help you if it benefits me." But when you grow closer to God, something shifts. You start loving in a way that doesn't make sense. You start loving people who don't deserve it, people who can't repay you, people who have hurt you, not because they earned it, but because that's how God loves you. Think about Jesus. He didn't just love the ones who followed him, who respected him, who treated him well. He loved the outcast, the lepers, the tax collectors, the ones society rejected, the ones no one else wanted to be around. And he didn't love them from a safe distance. He got close. He touched the untouchable. He forgave the unforgivable. He saw people not for who they were in that moment, but for who they could become. And that's the shift that happens when you start to love without limits. You stop seeing people as problems and start seeing them as souls. You stop looking at their past and start seeing their potential. You stop labeling them by their worst mistakes and start loving them into their best future. But let's be real, this kind of love is hard. It's uncomfortable, because real love isn't just about kindness. It's about sacrifice. It's about loving the people who are difficult to love. The family member who betrayed you, the friend who let you down, the person who talks about you behind your back. When you grow closer to God, you don't just love the easy ones. You love the ones who test your patience, the ones who challenge you, the ones who don't deserve it. Because that's exactly how God loves you. There was a woman who had been hurt deeply. She had been lied to, abandoned, and mistreated by people she trusted. She carried that pain for years, building walls to protect herself. But one day she realized something. Holding on to that pain wasn't making her stronger. It was making her bitter. She was so busy protecting herself that she wasn't allowing herself to love freely. And so she made a decision. She chose to forgive, not because they deserved it, not because they apologized, but because she refused to let her heart be hardened by hurt. And when she let go, something powerful happened. Peace replaced her pain. Love replaced her resentment. See, when you love without limits, you don't just free the other person, you free yourself. There's someone listening to this right now who has been holding on to anger. Someone who has been waiting for an apology that may never come. Someone who has been keeping score, deciding who deserves their kindness, who deserves their time, who deserves their time, who deserves their love. But let me tell you something. Real love doesn't keep score. Real love gives, even when it's not returned. Real love forgives, even when it's not deserved. Real love sees beyond the surface and chooses to believe in the good, even when it's buried deep. And that kind of love, it changes things. It heals families. It restores relationships. It breaks generational cycles of bitterness and division. Now maybe you're thinking, but you don't know what they did to me. You don't know how bad they hurt me. You don't know how hard it is to love people who don't deserve it. And you're right. I don't know your story. I don't know your pain. But I do know this: love is more powerful than resentment. Love is stronger than bitterness. And when you choose to love the way God loves, without limits, without conditions, without expecting anything in return, that's when you truly begin to live. So take a look around. Who have you been withholding love from? Who have you been judging instead of understanding? Who have you been avoiding? Because it's easier than forgiving. Because when you grow closer to God, love stops being something you give only when it's convenient. It becomes who you are. It becomes how you live. And when you love without limits, you don't just change the people around you. You change yourself. Let me tell you something. Life isn't about how much you have. It's not about how easy the road is. It's not about whether everything goes your way. No, life is about who you become in the process. It's about how you walk through the fire and come out stronger. It's about whether you let struggles break you or build you. It's about whether you choose truth over comfort, faith over fear, peace over panic, love over judgment. Because the reality is, storms will come, challenges will test you, people will disappoint you. But if you are rooted in something greater than yourself, if your faith is unshakable, if your heart is aligned with God, then no matter what happens, you will stand. You will not be moved. You want to know if you're growing closer to God? Look at how you handle the things that used to break you. Look at how you respond to the struggles that used to shake you. Look at how you love the people you once avoided. Look at how you carry peace even when everything around you is chaos. Look at how your heart craves truth even when it's uncomfortable. Because the world will tell you to chase comfort. The world will tell you to avoid struggle. The world will tell you to love only when it benefits you. But let me remind you of something. The world does not determine your destiny. God does. And let me tell you this. There is something powerful about a person who refuses to be shaken. A person who stands firm when everything around them is crumbling. A person who loves when it makes no sense to love. A person who finds peace in the middle of chaos. A person who walks through fire and doesn't even smell like smoke. That's what happens when you grow closer to God. You don't break under pressure. You rise above it. You don't let struggles define you. You let them refine you. You don't panic in the storm. You become the calm in the storm. You don't just survive, you thrive. And when you become that kind of person, let me tell you something. People will notice. They will see something different in you. They will wonder how you have joy when life is hard. They will wonder how you forgive when you've been hurt. They will wonder how you stay calm when the world is shaking. And that's when you tell them, it's not me, it's God in me. Because this journey, this growth, this transformation, it's not about you becoming better on your own. It's about letting God take over. It's about surrendering to a plan bigger than you. It's about trusting that every struggle, every setback, every delay is preparing you for something greater. So don't shrink back. Don't settle. Don't play small. Step into who you were created to be. Walk boldly in your purpose. Keep your eyes on the truth, even when it's hard. Keep growing. Keep trusting. Keep loving, because the best version of you, the strongest version of you, the unshakable, unstoppable, undeniable version of you, that version is on the other side of your comfort zone. That version is on the other side of your fear. That version is on the other side of the storm. And when you get there, when you step into the person you were meant to be, you won't just change your own life.